What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. So I thought I'd go ahead and do a little quick video. I find these things fun. I think a lot of you guys like these types of videos. Let me just first say that, look, this is just speculation. I don't know if I'm right, but it's just nice to speculate, just for discussion. So I want to talk about the 2024 presidential election for a second. Now we know that Donald Trump will run for a third time as president of the United States. Whether or not he actually gets the nomination, that is up for time to determine. Right now, as long as Joe Biden is still around in 2024, and as long as he wants the nomination, despite the fact that he'll be 81 years old at the time, the nomination is his for the taking. Now, there's one thing I want to say. If there is going to be a rematch between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, we don't know what's going to happen in the horizons. We don't, in the foreseeable future in the horizon, but we don't know what is coming in the future. But I do want to say this. From a historical standpoint, Joe Biden has a decisive advantage going into 2024 from a historical perspective, just because of the fact that rematches normally go in favor of the candidate that won the first time. There are some exceptions. One that comes to mind is 1892, when Grover Cleveland, who was defeated for re-election in 1888 to Benjamin Harrison, won a single second term in 1892 against Benjamin Harrison, the man that he had lost to 4 years prior. Now, what caused Benjamin Harrison to lose? The economy. The economy had faltered considerably to the point where by early 1893, and unfortunately for for Grover Cleveland's sake, because of the early in his term, the economy actually completely collapsed to a depression. But the economy had been in severe recession from late 1891 all through 1892, which hurt Benjamin Harrison's re-election bid. Secondly, Harrison had become extraordinarily unpopular within his own party, to the point where former Republican nominee James J. Blaine, who was the nominee in 1884, when he went against Grover Cleveland and Grover Cleveland defeated him, they wanted to renominate Blaine, but by this time Blaine's health was deteriorating and he wanted no parts of a nomination. But his own party didn't want him. The economy was in the shits, and tariff rates were so high that prices were so high for tariffs that imports were basically unpurchasable. So these were the situations that caused Benjamin Harrison to lose. But normally, under just regular conditions, the candidate that won in the prior election, when matched up against the same candidate, generally wins. I'll give you some examples. William Jennings Bryan ran against William McKinley in 1896. And Bryan, in that election, William Jennings Bryan was a very energetic 36-year-old nominee, the youngest major party nominee in the history of this country. And he broke major precedents when running for president that year. He actually campaigned aggressively, which is something that candidates didn't do back in the 19th century. He went out and campaigned and gave speeches and traveled thousands of miles and had the fervor of a preacher. And he went up against a huge money machine in William McKinley, who was backed by party boss Mark Hanna, and they had $3 million at their disposal in 1896. Now, I don't know off the top of my head how much money that'll be today, but that's a lot of fucking money in 1896. And he couldn't beat the machine, and ultimately he lost the Electoral College 271 to 176. The popular vote was 51% to 47%. So it was a pretty decisive victory. When he went against William McKinley in 1900, McKinley won a bigger victory. Why? Because the country was content with McKinley. We had went through a brief but very popular war, the Spanish-American War in 1898. The economy was great, and there was relative peace and prosperity throughout the country. And as a result, McKinley won the Electoral College by a little bit larger margin, 292 to 155, and the popular vote was this time 52% to 46%. So it was an even bigger victory for McKinley. Another time I can think of is 1952, when Eisenhower went up against Adlai Stevenson. Now, at that time, there had been 20 consecutive years of Democratic rule on the national ticket, going back to 1932. But this time, the Democratic Party's luck was going to run out. Eisenhower defeated Adlai Stevenson in a landslide by electoral count of 442 to 89. The popular vote was 55.1% to Stevenson's 44.4%. 1956, there was a rematch between two candidates. Eisenhower won by an even bigger margin this time, carrying 41 of 48 states, electoral vote of 457 to 73. One elector, I think, abstained in Tennessee. I think that was the state. And the popular vote was 57% to 42%. And so you get the picture. There's some other elections I can reference, just recent ones. 2018, Brian Kemp ran for governor against Stacey Abrams. That election was very close. Abrams got almost 49% of the vote. Brian Kemp got just over 50% of the vote, just enough to avoid a runoff. Whereas last week, Brian Kemp got almost 54% of the popular vote to Stacey Abrams' 45%. Wasn't even close. You get me? Like, generally when a candidate wins and at least there's a status quo. The candidate has... Voters will generally give the candidate who's in power the benefit of the doubt if things are at least decent. That candidate has the power of the incumbency at hand. And the candidate that has lost, especially a guy like Trump, who, when you look at the midterms now, because that's pretty much on him, because he's been seen as the force behind the party. In essence, that's like 3 consecutive losses, because the 2018 midterms was on him. 2020, he lost the presidency, and now he loses the midterms. So now he's starting to get a loser label on him. And especially if he goes through a very divisive primary battle between Ron DeSantis and he ekes out a victory, but the party is split apart and is not totally solidly behind Donald Trump, and the Democrats are solidly behind Joe Biden in this scenario, then that's another reason to be alarmed if you're a Republican. You're not going to get out to vote in the same way. A lot of disaffected Republicans who don't want anything to do with Trump are not going to come out to vote. So, yeah, these are things that could suppress Trump's vote if he is renominated. And there are signs that Trump's base is shrinking a bit. Now, is this temporary? I don't know, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, there is a history of whenever there's a rematch on the presidential level or just any election level, unless there is some significant determining factor at play. The economy is in the shits, or if there's a sleaze factor, something going on as far as with the candidate as far as scandal is concerned, but usually that also coincides with a bad economy. These are things that can knock a candidate out. But other than that, usually rematches favor the candidate in power. So just tell me what you guys think. You don't have to agree with me, but tell me what you guys think.